Millionaire CEO called his diabetic pregnant wife a burden and walked away. What happened next shocked everyone. I felt really emotional putting this beautiful love story together. Please, listen to the end. Let's go straight into the story without dragging anything. Sign the papers, Natasha. Take the money and disappear. That's all I'm asking. The voice cuts through the afternoon air like ice through silk. Vincent Morozov pushes the divorce settlement across the mahogany table in his corner office, 50 floors above Chicago's financial district. $50 million. More than you'll need for a lifetime. I don't want your money, Vincent. I want my husband back. Natasha's hands rest protectively over her swollen belly, 7 months pregnant, and shaking with more than just low blood sugar. The man who promised me forever in that vineyard in Tuscany. Remember? You said diabetes was just another adventure we'd face together. That was before you decided to risk everything with this pregnancy. Before you chose potential motherhood over definitely staying alive. Before you became. He stops, but the word hangs there anyway. Say it. Say what you've been thinking for months. Say it to my face, you coward. A burden. You've become a burden, Natasha. On my time, my focus, my future. Every board meeting I miss for your medical appointments. Every night I spend watching you check blood sugars instead of checking portfolios. Every moment I wonder if I'll come home to find you in a coma. You're dragging me down, and I won't let you. These are your children I'm carrying. They're potential lawsuits. They're future medical expenses. They're everything I worked to escape when I clawed my way out of poverty. I won't go back to being that kid watching his mother die slowly because she couldn't afford proper care. I'm not your mother, Vincent, and you're not poor anymore. No, but you're making me weak. And weakness is something I can't afford. Let me tell you about what happens when fear dresses itself up as logic and calls itself practical. When a man worth $900 million discovers that all his money can't buy him courage. When a woman finds out that the life growing inside her is stronger than the life falling apart around her. But before you judge Vincent Morozov too harshly, before you write him off as another heartless billionaire, you need to understand something. This isn't just a story about a man who failed at love. This is a story about what happened when that failure came back to haunt him in ways he never imagined. When the universe decided to teach him that some burdens are actually blessings in disguise. And if you think you know where this is going, I promise you don't. Because what Natasha Volkov did after Vincent walked out that door would reshape not just their lives, but the entire pharmaceutical industry. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served at exactly 98.6 degrees, with a side of justice no one saw coming. 6 months before that brutal conversation, Vincent Morozov was on top of the world. His biotech company, Nexus Pharmaceuticals, had just patented a revolutionary diabetes management system. Stock prices soared. Medical journals called him a visionary. At 36, he had everything he dreamed of while growing up in a 2-room apartment in Detroit, watching his diabetic mother ration insulin because choosing between medicine and rent wasn't really a choice at all. The gala where he met Natasha was supposed to be just another networking opportunity. The Drake Hotel, black tie, Chicago's medical elite celebrating something he'd already forgotten. He was at the bar, ordering whiskey he didn't want, when he heard the crash. A server had dropped an entire tray of champagne, glass exploding across marble like expensive fireworks. But instead of the expected chaos, there was laughter. A woman in a midnight blue dress was on her knees beside the mortified server, helping collect glass shards with her bare hands. It's just glass, she was saying in accented English, Russian maybe. It breaks, we clean it up, life goes on. No one died from spilled champagne. Ma'am, please, you'll cut yourself, the server protested. I've survived worse than a little glass. Here, let me help. Vincent found himself moving toward her before his brain could stop his feet. You're bleeding. She looked up, and those green eyes hit him like a shot of adrenaline straight to his chest. Not because they were beautiful, although they were, but because they looked at him without calculation, without that measuring gaze that usually preceded someone figuring out his net worth. So I am, she said, examining her palm where a shard had indeed caught her. Do you have a handkerchief? Or is that too old-fashioned for modern millionaires? How did you know I'm a millionaire? The watch. Patek Philippe, limited edition. Either you're wealthy or you have excellent taste in theft. He wrapped her hand with his handkerchief, Noted the calluses that suggested real work, the faint scars that suggested real life. Vincent Morozov, I know who you are. Your insulin delivery system is being tested at my clinic. You're a doctor? Natasha Volkov. I run a free clinic on the south side. We serve mostly immigrants who can't afford regular health care. Diabetics who choose between food and medicine. You know, the people your company pretends to care about in press releases. That's rather harsh. That's rather accurate. But I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. Buy me a drink to replace the champagne I'm wearing, and tell me why Vincent Morozov really cares about diabetics. He bought her that drink. Then dinner the next night. Then breakfast the morning after that, though nothing had happened between them except conversation that ran until dawn. She challenged everything he thought he knew about himself, his company, his purpose. You built walls out of money, she told him on their fifth date, sitting in her tiny apartment above the clinic. But walls keep things out as much as they keep you in. Philosophical for a Tuesday night. I'm Russian. We're philosophical about everything. Also drunk. A little drunk. On 2 glasses of wine. I'm a lightweight. Also, did I mention I'm diabetic? Type 1. Diagnosed at 15. Probably should have mentioned that sooner, but I wanted you to see me as Natasha first, patient second. The irony wasn't lost on him. The diabetes mogul falling for a diabetic. But Natasha wore her condition like armor, not weakness. She managed it with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker and the nonchalance of someone who'd accepted mortality and decided to live anyway. Their first kiss happened in her clinic, of all places. She was showing him around after hours, explaining how they stretched every dollar, how they made miracles out of expired medications and determination. He'd written a check on the spot. A big one. I don't want your money, she'd said. It's not for you. It's for them. You can't buy your way into my bed, Vincent. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to buy my way into being someone you could respect. Why do you care if I respect you? Because you're the first person in a decade who's looked at me and seen something worth saving. She'd kissed him then, surrounded by medical supplies and the lingering scent of disinfectant. It should have been unromantic. Instead, it was perfect. She kissed like she did everything else, with complete commitment and no apologies. This is a terrible idea, she said against his lips. The worst, he agreed, pulling her closer. I'm complicated. I'm damaged. I work 18-hour days. I work 20. I'll never fit into your world. Then I'll fit into yours. But that was a lie, wasn't it? Vincent couldn't fit into any world but the one he built from ambition and fear. The relationship progressed anyway, against all logic. She moved into his penthouse, but kept her apartment. He funded her clinic, but never visited during business hours. They loved each other in the spaces between their real lives, in the moments when they could pretend their worlds weren't fundamentally incompatible. The first time they made love was after a fight. She'd accused him of being ashamed of her. He'd accused her of being too proud to accept help. They'd screamed at each other in his pristine penthouse, her Russian accent thickening with anger, his carefully cultivated corporate voice cracking to reveal the Detroit street kid underneath. You want to save everyone but yourself, she'd shouted. You want to be saved but won't admit it, he'd shot back. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving. Then save me, Vincent. Stop talking and save me. He'd crossed the room in 3 strides, lifted her onto the kitchen counter, and kissed her like drowning. She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, their anger transforming into something else entirely. When he entered her, right there in his sterile kitchen with its unused appliances, it was like breaking through walls they'd both built. I love you, she gasped against his neck. I'm terrified of you, he admitted. Same thing sometimes. They moved to the bedroom eventually, made love properly in sheets that cost more than most people's rent. She traced the scars on his back from childhood fights. He kissed the bruises on her stomach from insulin injections. 2 damaged people finding wholeness in each other's brokenness. We're going to destroy each other, she said afterward. Probably. Is it worth it? Ask me when we're done destroying. The proposal came a year later, in the clinic of all places. He'd arrived to find her teaching a diabetic teenager how to inject insulin without fear. The girl was crying, terrified of needles despite needing them to live. Natasha was patient, gentle, showing her own injection sites, making it normal. See? I've been doing this for 15 years. Still alive, still beautiful according to my boyfriend, still able to eat cake on birthdays. Diabetes doesn't mean your life is over. It means your life requires more attention. Like a high-maintenance plant. You just need to water it correctly. Watching her turn fear into courage, Vincent felt something shift in his chest. This woman who faced her mortality daily with such grace, who gave everything to strangers, who loved him despite his sharp edges. "Marry me," he said when the teenager left. "Vincent, you're in my workplace. Marry me anyway." "Why?" "Because you make me want to be the man my press releases pretend I am. Because you're the only person who calls me on my bullshit and stays anyway. Because I love you more than I fear losing you." That last one's a lie. It's a work in progress. She said yes anyway. The wedding was small, just 40 people in a Michigan vineyard. She wore a dress she'd found in a vintage shop. He wore a suit that cost more than her annual salary. When they kissed at the altar, his board members politely applauded while her clinic workers cheered. The problem started immediately, not with them, but with everyone around them. His board was concerned about his image being married to someone who worked in that neighborhood. Her colleagues worried she'd lose her edge, go soft with all that money. Both sides were right and wrong in equal measure. Mrs. Morozov, people would say at galas, and she'd laugh. Dr. Volkov, she'd correct. I kept my name and added his. Natasha Volkov Morozov. Very Russian, very complicated, very me. She didn't fit into his world of calculated charity and strategic philanthropy. She'd corner pharmaceutical executives at parties, demanding to know why their drugs cost so much. She'd bring patient stories to board dinners, making powerful men uncomfortable with reality. "You're embarrassing me," Vincent said after she'd made a senator's wife cry with a story about a child who died rationing insulin. "I'm embarrassing your image. There's a difference. Not in my world. Then your world needs changing. That's not how it works." "Then how does it work, Vincent? We smile and nod while people die? We toast with champagne that costs more than a month's supply of insulin? We pretend the system isn't broken because we're benefiting from the breaks? We work within the system to change it. You mean we work within the system to profit from it?" The fight that followed was their worst yet. But the make-up sex was their best, angry and desperate, and full of the need to prove they could bridge their worlds with their bodies if not their beliefs. Then came the pregnancy. It was unplanned but not unwelcome. At least not at first. They'd been careless, caught up in a weekend away where they'd pretended to be normal people in love. When the test came back positive, they stared at it like it might explode. "Well," Natasha said finally, "this changes things." "Everything," Vincent agreed, but his voice was already tight with fear. The first doctor's appointment confirmed twins. The second confirmed what Vincent had been dreading. The pregnancy would be high risk. Natasha's diabetes, well controlled as it was, made everything more complicated. The chances of complications were significant. "We can manage it," the doctor assured them. "With careful monitoring, adjusted insulin protocols, and regular checkups. Many diabetic women have healthy pregnancies." "Many isn't all," Vincent said. "No pregnancy is without risk, Mr. Morozov. But this pregnancy is riskier than most." "Vincent," Natasha warned. "I'm just trying to understand the statistics. You're trying to find an excuse to panic." She was right. He was already panicking. Because suddenly, it wasn't theoretical. It wasn't about unnamed diabetic mothers and statistics. It was about Natasha, his Natasha, who could die bringing life into the world. "I want you to terminate," he said that night, the words hanging in their bedroom like a toxin. "Excuse me. The pregnancy. It's too dangerous. Your blood sugars are already harder to control. Add twins, add the stress on your body, add all the things that could go wrong. Add life, Vincent. Add our children. Add a family. I'd rather have you alive than have a family. That's not your choice to make. You're my wife. I'm a person, my own person, who makes her own medical decisions. Based on emotion, not logic. Based on hope, not fear. Hope doesn't keep people alive, Natasha. Medicine does. Statistics do. Then here's a statistic for you. 100% of people who live in fear are already dead. They just haven't stopped breathing yet." The fight escalated from there. He brought medical journals. She brought patient testimonials. He quoted mortality rates. She quoted success stories. They went to bed angry, woke up angrier, and somewhere in between, stopped touching each other entirely. The turning point came at her 20-week appointment. The ultrasound showed 2 healthy babies, developing normally. But her blood work showed something else. Her kidney function was declining, a possible early sign of preeclampsia. We'll monitor it closely, the doctor said. It might be nothing. Or it might be everything, Vincent said. In the car afterward, Natasha was quiet. Too quiet. Say it, she finally demanded. Say what? Whatever cruel thing you're thinking. Whatever justification you're building for why I should give up these babies. You could die, Natasha. Actually die. Not theoretically, not statistically, but really truly die. And for what? For the possibility of children who might not even survive. For the certainty that life is worth the risk. For the belief that love is stronger than fear. For everything you used to believe before you let terror turn you into a coward. I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to protect yourself. From loss, from pain, from the possibility that something might matter more than your money and control. That's not. It is, Vincent. And the saddest part is, you've convinced yourself it's logic. But it's just fear wearing an expensive suit. That night, she moved back to her apartment above the clinic. Still married, but separated by more than distance. Vincent threw himself into work, expanding his company's reach, as if professional success could fill the Natasha-shaped hole in his life. But if you've ever loved someone, really loved them, you know that replacement doesn't work. You can't substitute one feeling for another. You can only bury it and hope it doesn't resurrect itself at inconvenient moments. Like when he'd wake up at 3 a.m., reaching for her warmth and finding only cold sheets. Like when he'd see pregnant women on the street and wonder if Natasha was taking care of herself. Like when his mother's death date came around and he had no one to tell him it wasn't his fault she'd died poor and sick. The calls from Natasha's friend Marina came weekly, updating him despite his requests for silence. She's at 24 weeks. Babies are growing well. 26 weeks. Her blood sugar control is excellent. 28 weeks. Some swelling, but managing. He never responded, but he saved every voicemail. Played them repeatedly in his empty penthouse, torturing himself with updates about a life he'd walked away from. Then came the call that changed everything. Mr. Morozov? This is Marina. Natasha is in labor. It's too early, only 31 weeks. She's asking for you. He almost didn't go. Almost convinced himself that he'd forfeited the right. But something, maybe love, maybe guilt, maybe just the muscle memory of caring, got him in his car and racing toward Chicago General. He arrived to find controlled chaos. Natasha was in active labor, the babies were in distress, and her blood sugars were dangerously unstable. Where the hell have you been? Marina confronted him in the hallway. She's been asking for you for hours. I didn't think I had the right. You don't. But she wants you anyway. So go. Be the man she thinks you can be, just this once. He entered the delivery room to find Natasha pale, sweating, fighting through a contraction. Her eyes found his, and for a moment, neither spoke. You came, she finally managed. You called. I've been calling for months, Vincent. In every way except literally. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Another contraction hit, cutting off whatever response she might have made. He took her hand without thinking, and she squeezed it hard enough to hurt. Good. He deserved hurt. The babies, she gasped when it passed. They're coming too early. They're fighters. Like their mother. They need to be. Because their father's a runner. Before he could respond, alarms started going off. Natasha's blood pressure was spiking. The baby's heart rates were dropping. Everything was going wrong at once. Comment below if you've ever witnessed love and fear colliding in real time, because that's exactly what was happening in that delivery room. We need to do an emergency C-section, the doctor announced. Now, Vincent, Natasha gripped his hand. If something happens, if you have to choose, nothing's going to happen. If you have to choose between me and them, I choose all of you. All three of you. I'm done choosing fear over love. But as they wheeled her into surgery, Vincent knew that some choices weren't his to make. Some things were beyond money, beyond control, beyond everything except hope. And hope, as he'd learned, was something he'd been out of practice with for a very long time. The surgery was supposed to take 45 minutes. Vincent knew this because he'd Googled it obsessively while pacing the waiting room like a caged animal. 45 minutes for a routine cesarean. But nothing about this was routine. Not with Natasha's blood sugar spiking to dangerous levels. Not with the twins coming 8 weeks early. Not with the weight of his abandonment making every second feel like penance. Marina sat in the corner, her judgment radiating across the sterile waiting room. "You should have been here," she said for the third time. "These past 2 months, you should have been here." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you put her through? Working 18-hour shifts at the clinic while 7 months pregnant because she couldn't afford to hire help? Checking her blood sugars in between patients? Passing out twice from low blood sugar because she was so focused on others she forgot to eat? She could have taken the money I offered. Your guilt money? Your go away and be quiet money? She has more pride than that. Pride doesn't pay medical bills. No, but it lets her look at herself in the mirror. Something you might struggle with these days." She wasn't wrong. Vincent had avoided mirrors for weeks, unable to face the man who'd called his pregnant, diabetic wife a burden. The man who'd chosen his fear over his family. The man who'd become everything he'd once sworn to fight against. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Something was wrong. Vincent could feel it in the way nurses avoided eye contact as they passed, in the way the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, a doctor emerged. Not Natasha's regular obstetrician, but someone new, someone with the kind of face that delivered bad news professionally. "Mr. Morozov? I'm Dr. Chun, your wife." "Ex-wife," Vincent corrected automatically, then hated himself for it. "Your wife," Dr. Chun continued pointedly, "experienced severe complications during delivery. Diabetic ketoacidosis triggered by the stress of premature labor. Her blood became dangerously acidic. We delivered the twins successfully, but Natasha suffered a series of seizures immediately after." "Seizures?" "Her brain couldn't handle the metabolic chaos. We've managed to stabilize her, but she's in a coma. The combination of the diabetic crisis and the neurological trauma. Mr. Morozov, I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. Just tell me." "There's significant brain damage. The scans show minimal activity in several regions. She's on full life support. Ventilator, feeding tube, the works. Without these machines, she dies. Her body stops functioning. Whether she's already gone is a question we can't answer definitively." Vincent felt the floor tilt beneath him. This wasn't supposed to happen. In his world of calculated risks and managed outcomes, this kind of chaos didn't exist. But bodies don't care about spreadsheets. Death doesn't negotiate. "The twins?" he managed to ask. "They're in the NICU. Twin A, the boy, is stable but needs breathing support. Twin B, the girl, is smaller but fighting hard. They'll need to stay here for several weeks minimum." "Can I see them?" "Can I see her?" "Of course. But Mr. Morozov, there's something else. As her next of kin, you have medical power of attorney. Natasha never updated her paperwork after your separation, which means decisions about her care fall to you." The weight of that responsibility hit Vincent like a physical blow. The woman he'd abandoned, called a burden, walked away from, and now her life was literally in his hands. Marina stood up, her face twisted with disgust. "You don't deserve that power. I know. You'll pull the plug. Save money, avoid inconvenience. It's what men like you do. You don't know what I'll do. I don't know what I'll do. I know what Natasha would want. She'd want to fight. She'd want to try. She'd want her children to know she didn't give up. Even if fighting means existing without living. Even if trying means bankrupting their future on false hope. See? You're already doing it. Already turning her life into a cost-benefit analysis. She was right about you. You let your money become your soul, and now you have neither." Marina left, her condemnation hanging in the air like smoke from a fire that had already consumed everything worth saving. Vincent stood alone in the waiting room, caught between the NICU where his children fought for life and the ICU where their mother might already be gone. He went to the twins first. Coward's choice, maybe, but he needed to see what Natasha had been fighting for. The NICU was its own kind of purgatory, tiny humans in plastic wombs, more machine than baby. The boy was bigger, maybe 3 pounds, with Vincent's dark hair already visible. The girl was tiny, barely 2 pounds, but her face carried Natasha's fierce determination even in sleep. "They need names," the nurse said gently. "For the birth certificates. Their mother was supposed to name them. She had a list. Russian names, she said. Strong names for strong babies. Well, someone needs to make a decision. These babies can't stay nameless forever." But how could he name them? How could he make that choice when he'd forfeited the right to make any choices about this family? He stood there, looking at these tiny strangers who carried his DNA in Natasha's spirit and felt the full weight of his failure. Can I hold them? Not yet. They're too fragile. But you can touch them. Talk to them. They recognize voices, even this early. Vincent reached into the incubator, his finger finding the boy's impossibly small hand. The baby gripped it with surprising strength, a reflex maybe, but it felt like a lifeline. Hello, he whispered. I'm your father. I know I don't deserve that title. I know I failed you before you were even born. But I'm here now. Too late, but here. The girl stirred at his voice, her face scrunching in what might have been recognition or might have been gas. But Vincent chose to believe it was recognition. Chose to believe that somewhere in her premature nervous system, she knew him. Your mother is. He stopped. How do you tell babies their mother might be dying? How do you explain comas and life support to beings who don't even understand breathing yet? Your mother is fighting. She's always been a fighter. You get that from her. The fighting spirit. From me, you probably got stubbornness and the tendency to run from feelings. Sorry about that. He stayed with them for an hour, memorizing their faces, their sounds, the way they moved in their sleep. Then, because he couldn't delay anymore, he went to see Natasha. She looked nothing like herself. The vibrant woman who'd challenged him in the clinic, who'd loved him despite himself, who'd carried these babies even as he called her a burden, was gone. In her place was a body kept functioning by machines. Tubes down her throat, IVs in both arms, monitors tracking vital signs that only existed because of chemical intervention. Oh, Natasha, he breathed, sinking into the chair beside her bed. What have I done? Her hand was still warm. That was the cruelest part. Warm like she might wake up any moment, might squeeze his hand back, might forgive him for everything. But the monitors showed the truth. Minimal brain activity. Functional, but not conscious. Alive, but not living. I was supposed to protect you, he said to her still form. That's what husbands do. Protect their wives. Instead, I was the thing you needed protection from. I became the villain in your story, and now I might have to be the villain again. Because someone has to decide whether you keep breathing, and that someone is me. The person least qualified to make that choice. A knock at the door interrupted his confession. It was an older woman he didn't recognize, wearing a cleaning uniform, but carrying herself with the dignity of someone who'd seen too much to be impressed by wealth or tragedy. You're the husband, she said. Not a question. I'm Vincent Morozov. I know who you are. I'm Irina. I clean this floor every night. I've been watching your wife for the past 12 hours. Watching her. Someone should. Someone who sees her as more than a problem to be solved. I knew her, you know, from the clinic. She treated my granddaughter's diabetes when we couldn't afford anywhere else. She never mentioned. She wouldn't. Natasha never bragged about her kindness. Just performed it, like breathing. Natural and necessary. Irina moved into the room, adjusting Natasha's blanket with practiced care. You're thinking about letting her go. How did you? It's in your face. The same look my son had when his wife was dying of cancer. The look of someone calculating whether love is worth the cost. It's not that simple. It never is. But let me tell you something, Mr. Rich Man. I've cleaned these rooms for 20 years. I've seen families make this choice hundreds of times. The ones who choose hope, even stupid hope, even expensive hope, they sleep better. The ones who choose convenience, who choose the easy ending, they carry it forever. But what if she never wakes up? What if I keep her alive for years and she's just gone? Then at least those babies will know their father tried. That when faced with the hardest choice, he chose hope over fear. Isn't that the lesson you'd want them to learn? She left him with that question, returning to her work while Vincent sat with his comatose wife, wrestling with mathematics that had no clean solution. The cost of keeping Natasha alive could reach millions. The emotional toll on the twins of growing up with a mother who was present but absent could be devastating. But the alternative? Mrs. Volkov-Morozov, a different doctor entered, this one carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of someone about to complicate an already impossible situation. I'm Dr. Harrison from neurology. We've completed additional scans. And there's something unusual. Small, possibly insignificant, but unusual. We're seeing minimal activity in regions we'd normally expect to be dark. It's not consciousness, not even close, but it's something. Something. The brain is mysterious, Mr. Morozov. Sometimes it finds pathways around damage. Sometimes those pathways lead nowhere. Sometimes they lead to recovery. We simply don't know. So you're saying there's hope? I'm saying there's activity. Whether that equals hope is a philosophical question, not a medical one. How long would we need to wait to know? Every case is different. Some people wake up in days, some in months, some never. The longer she remains in a coma, the less likely recovery becomes. But unlikely isn't impossible. Give me a number, a timeline, something concrete. If I had to make an educated guess, if she's going to recover, we'd see signs within 6 months. After that, the probability drops to nearly zero. 6 months. Vincent could keep her alive for 6 months. It would cost everything, financially and emotionally, but he could do it. The question was whether he should. Whether extending her existence without her consent was love or selfishness. He thought about their last real conversation, before the fight that ended everything. They'd been lying in bed on a Sunday morning, a rare moment when neither had anywhere to be. Natasha had been tracing patterns on his chest, talking about the future. When we're old, she'd said, I want us to be the couple that still holds hands. The ones who embarrass their children with how much they still love each other. Bold of you to assume I'll age well, he'd replied. Bold of you to assume I care what you look like. I fell in love with your soul, Vincent, not your cheekbones. Although the cheekbones don't hurt. My soul is questionable at best. Your soul is beautiful. It's just buried under all that fear and money. But I can see it. I've always been able to see it. What if you stop seeing it? What if one day you wake up and realize I'm just another rich asshole who values profit over people? She'd looked at him, then with such certainty it had taken his breath away. Then I'll remind you who you really are. That's what love does. It remembers the truth when we forget. But she couldn't remind him now. Couldn't tell him who he really was beneath the fear. He had to remember on his own, and Vincent wasn't sure he knew how. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of medical consultations and impossible decisions. The twins grew stronger daily, defying their premature start. The boy, who Vincent had started thinking of as Mikhail in honor of Natasha's father, came off breathing support. The girl, possibly Katya after Natasha's grandmother, gained weight with fierce determination. But Natasha remained unchanged. The machines breathed for her. The medicines kept her heart beating. The feeding tube provided nutrition to a body that couldn't ask for food. She existed in the space between life and death, and Vincent existed there with her. You need to go home, Marina said, finding him on day 4, unshaven and wearing the same clothes. Shower, eat, sleep in a real bed. I can't leave them or her. Both. All. I left once already. I can't do it again. This is different. This is self-care, not abandonment. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks the same. A man walking away when things get hard. Marina sat down beside him, her anger from days ago replaced by something softer. She loved you, you know. Even after you left. Even after you called her a burden. She still loved you. Love past tense. I don't know. How do you conjugate love when someone's in a coma? Present tense feels presumptuous. Past tense feels like giving up. Continuous tense. She is loving me. Even now, even like this. That's not grammatically correct. Neither is our entire relationship, but here we are. They sat in silence, watching Natasha's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Somewhere down the hall, one of the twins was crying. The sound pulled at something primal in Vincent's chest. Go to them, Marina said. The babies need their father. They need their mother. They have you. That has to be enough for now. But was it? Was a father who'd run from responsibility enough for babies who deserved everything? Vincent didn't know. But he went anyway, drawn by the sound of his daughter's cries. The NICU nurse was trying to comfort her, but Katya was having none of it. Her tiny face was red with fury, her limbs flailing with impressive strength for someone who weighed less than a laptop. She's hungry, the nurse explained. But she's struggling with the bottle. Preemies sometimes have trouble with the suck-swallow reflex. Can I try? Of course. Vincent took his daughter for the first time, her weight negligible, but her presence enormous. She stopped crying for a moment, seeming surprised by the change in handlers. Her eyes, when they opened, were Natasha's green. Hello, little warrior, he whispered. I'm your incompetent father. But I'm trying. He offered the bottle, and she attacked it with enthusiasm that would have been funny if it wasn't so desperate. She was hungry for life, for nutrition, for everything the world could offer. Just like her mother. That's it, he encouraged as she figured out the rhythm. Fight for it. Take what you need. She drained the bottle in record time, then promptly fell asleep against his chest, tiny fingers gripping his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear. Smart girl. He had a history of disappearing. Mr. Morozov? Another doctor, this one from the hospital's administration. We need to discuss your wife's care plan. Can it wait? I'm holding my daughter. I'm afraid not. Decisions need to be made about long-term care. The insurance situation is complicated given your separation and the costs. I'll pay. Whatever it costs, I'll pay. Mr. Morozov, we're talking about potentially millions of dollars. The ICU alone is $40,000 a day. Add in the specialists, the scans, the medications, and if she requires long-term care. I said I'll pay. For how long? That was the question, wasn't it? How long do you keep hope alive when hope costs $40,000 a day? How long do you wait for a miracle that might never come? If you've ever had to put a price on love, you know there's no number that makes sense. Either it's worth everything or it's worth nothing. There's no middle ground in matters of life and death. Comment below if you understand what I mean. 6 months, Vincent heard himself say. I'll give her 6 months. And then we reassess. But for 6 months, you do everything. Every treatment, every therapy, every possible intervention. I don't care what it costs. That's a significant financial commitment, Mr. Morozov. I've made significant financial mistakes. Maybe it's time I made a significant financial sacrifice. The administrator left with his answer, and Vincent sat with his sleeping daughter, calculating the cost of redemption. 6 months of ICU care would cost over $7 million. The twins' NICU stay would add another $2 million. Specialists, therapies, medications. He was looking at $10 million minimum. $10 million to maybe save a woman who might not want to be saved by him. But what was money compared to the weight of his daughter sleeping trustingly against his chest? What was wealth compared to the possibility that his son might know his mother's voice? What was his entire fortune compared to the chance to undo the worst mistake of his life? Your mother would think I'm trying to buy my way out of guilt, he told the sleeping baby. And she'd be right. But sometimes guilt is just love that arrived too late. And late is better than never. The dreams changed everything and nothing. Natasha's eyes moved beneath closed lids, chasing visions no one else could see, while Vincent chased hope through hospital corridors. 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 6. The twins graduated from incubators to regular bassinets, their premature beginning becoming a distant memory as they gained weight with determination that would have made their mother proud. She squeezed my hand, Vincent announced one morning, bursting into the NICU where Alexei was feeding Mikhail. I was talking to her about the twins, and she squeezed my hand. Reflex, Alexei said without looking up. The doctors told you. Coma patients show reflexive responses. This was different. This was intentional. I asked her to squeeze if she could hear me, and she did. You want it to be intentional. That's not the same as it being intentional. Why are you so determined to destroy my hope? Because false hope killed my wife. Alexei finally met his eyes. She had cancer. Doctors gave her 6 months. I spent 3 years believing every twitch was improvement, every stable day was recovery. I bankrupted myself on treatments, on specialists, on miracles that never came. She died anyway, and I'd wasted our last years chasing impossible futures instead of accepting present realities. This is different, is it? Or are you just another man refusing to let go? Vincent wanted to argue, but Katia chose that moment to projectile vomit across his shirt. Parenting had a way of interrupting philosophical debates with biological realities. He cleaned them both up, his movements now practiced after weeks of daily care. He'd learned their rhythms, their needs, their individual personalities emerging like photographs in developer fluid. Mikhail was contemplative, those serious eyes tracking movement with unusual focus for a baby. He rarely cried, preferring to observe the world with what Vincent had started calling his boardroom face. Katia was pure emotion, crying when unhappy, laughing when pleased, no middle ground in her tiny heart. She'd gained weight faster than her brother, as if determined to make up for her smaller start. Your mother would love how different you are, Vincent told them during a quiet moment. She always said diversity was strength. Of course, she was talking about her clinic staff, not twin personalities, but the principle applies. The hospital had become his world. He'd moved his office to a nearby hotel suite, running his empire between feedings and doctor consultations. His board was restless, investors nervous about a CEO who prioritized premature babies over profit margins. Vincent didn't care. For the first time in his life, something mattered more than money. Mr. Morozov? Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. The twins are ready for discharge. The words hit like a punch. Discharge. They've reached all their developmental milestones. 5 pounds each, eating well, maintaining temperature. There's no medical reason to keep them here. But their mother can't care for them, which means you need to make arrangements. Do you have help lined up? Nannies. Family. Vincent looked at Alexei, who was studiously ignoring the conversation. They developed an uneasy alliance over the weeks, united in caring for the twins, but divided on everything else. Alexei thought Vincent was delusional about Natasha's recovery. Vincent thought Alexei had given up too easily. Neither was entirely wrong. I'll figure it out, Vincent said. You'll need to. Premature twins require extra attention. Their immune systems are still developing. They'll need follow-up appointments, specialized care. This isn't something you can delegate entirely. I said I'll figure it out. But how did you figure out raising children when their mother was 3 floors away, technically alive, but practically absent? How did you create a home for babies who'd only known hospitals? How did you become a father when you'd barely learned to be a husband? That night, Vincent sat with Natasha, the twins sleeping in their hospital bassinets nearby. He'd gotten special permission to bring them for these visits, convinced that their presence might trigger something in their mother's damaged brain. They're going home tomorrow, he told her still form. Our babies are leaving the hospital. I've hired nurses, bought everything the books recommend. Your father thinks I'm foolish, trying to do this alone. He's probably right. I don't know how to be a father. I barely knew how to be a husband. But I'm trying, Natasha. For them. For you. For the family we should have been. Her eyes moved beneath the lids. REM sleep, the doctors said. Just dreams. But Vincent had started timing them, noting patterns. The movements increased when he talked about the twins. Decreased when he discussed business. As if even unconscious, she had priorities. I've been thinking about what you wrote in your journal. About walls keeping love in as much as pain out. You were right. I built so many walls I forgot what I was protecting. By the time I remembered, I'd locked myself out of my own life. The machines breathed their mechanical rhythm. Somewhere, a monitor beeped. Normal sounds that had become the soundtrack to his new existence. Katia looks like you, he continued. Same stubborn chin. Same green eyes. She fights everything, sleep, bottles, diaper changes. Like the world is something to be conquered, not experienced. Mikhail is quieter. He watches and waits, planning his moments. I think he got my tendency to overthink. Poor kid. A nurse entered to check vitals, moving around him with practiced efficiency. They'd gotten used to Vincent's vigils, stopped suggesting he go home and rest. This was his rest now, these one-sided conversations with the woman he'd failed. Mr. Morozov? Dr. Harrison appeared, tablet in hand. We've had the specialist review the latest scans. And the REM activity is increasing. Not just in frequency, but in complexity. Her brain is active, Mr. Morozov. More active than a typical coma patient. But what? But it's not organized activity. It's not the patterns we see in conscious patients. It's like her brain is trying to restart, but can't find the right sequence. Like a computer stuck in a boot loop. So what do? We wait. We support. Some patients need weeks to reorganize. Some need months. Some never do. I wish I could give you better answers. What about experimental treatments? I've been researching. There are studies with electrical stimulation, pharmaceutical interventions, all with significant risks and minimal proven benefits. Mr. Morozov, I understand your desperation, but sometimes the best treatment is time and stability. Her brain needs to heal at its own pace. Time. The one thing money couldn't buy, influence couldn't expedite, determination couldn't force. Vincent had conquered markets, built empires, bent reality to his will through sheer force of ambition. But he couldn't make neurons fire faster, couldn't will synapses to reconnect, couldn't negotiate with a brain that had its own timeline. The next morning, discharge day arrived with all the fanfare of a funeral. Nurses who'd spent 6 weeks caring for the twins said tearful goodbyes. Doctors provided final instructions. Car seats were installed and inspected. And through it all, Vincent felt like he was abandoning Natasha, leaving her in this sterile place while taking the children she'd fought to bring into the world. "You're not abandoning her," Marina said, appearing as they prepared to leave. "You're taking care of what she loved most. That's what she'd want. She'd want to be with them. Yes, but want and reality haven't been speaking lately. So we deal with what is, not what should be." The ride home felt surreal. Vincent had driven this route hundreds of times, but never with two tiny humans in the back seat. Never with Alexei beside him providing unnecessary directions. Never with the weight of sole responsibility crushing his chest. His penthouse looked different with babies in it. The pristine spaces suddenly seemed dangerous, all sharp edges and hard surfaces. The nursery he'd had professionally designed felt cold, like a magazine spread instead of a home. The twins seemed to sense it too, both crying in harmony as soon as they entered. "They know," Alexei said. "Babies always know when something's missing. It's just a new environment. They'll adjust, like you've adjusted to life without her." "That's not fair. Fair is for children's games. This is life. These babies need more than you're equipped to give." "Then help me. Teach me. You raised 3 daughters. Show me how. You want me to fix your mistakes? I want you to help your grandchildren. Whatever you think of me, they're innocent. They deserve better than a failing father and a bitter grandfather." Alexei studied him for a long moment. Then, without a word, he picked up Katia and began walking her around the apartment, humming that same low tune that seemed to calm both twins. Vincent followed with Mikhail, trying to match the rhythm. "First lesson," Alexei said. "Babies need movement. In the womb, they're constantly rocked by their mother's motions. Static environments feel wrong to them. So we walk. We sway. We provide the movement they've lost." For the next hour, Alexei taught how to read different cries, hunger versus discomfort versus exhaustion, how to burp efficiently, how to change a diaper on a squirming infant without getting sprayed. Basic skills that Vincent's money couldn't shortcut. Natasha learned all this from books, Alexei said as they finally got both twins settled. Always studying, that one. Preparing for motherhood like it was another degree to earn. She had notebooks full of research, schedules planned, theories to test. Where are they? The notebooks. Probably at the clinic. She practically lived there those last months. Would you help me find them? I want to know what she planned. What she wanted for them. Tomorrow. Tonight. You need to learn the hardest lesson. Which is, sleeping when they sleep. Everything else can wait. But Vincent couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, hyper-aware of every sound from the nursery. The night nurse he'd hired was competent, professional, but she wasn't Natasha. She didn't have a mother's instinct or a father's fear. She had training and a paycheck, which suddenly seemed insufficient. By 3 a.m., he was in the nursery, dismissing the nurse and taking over. Mikhail needed a bottle. Katia needed a diaper change. Both needed holding, the human contact that no amount of professional care could replace. "I'm trying," he whispered to them in the darkness. "I know I'm not her. I know I'm not enough. But I'm here and I'm trying." Katia grabbed his finger with surprising strength, her tiny hand a reminder of how much power could exist in small packages. Mikhail finished his bottle and immediately fell back asleep, trusting as only infants could. They didn't know their father was a failure, didn't know their mother was trapped between life and death. They only knew warmth and food and the voice that had been reading stock reports to them for weeks. The next day, Alexei kept his promise. They went to the clinic, babies in tow, entering Natasha's other world. The waiting room was full despite the early hour. Immigrants with nowhere else to go, people choosing between health and rent, the invisible casualties of a system that measured worth in dollars. "Dr. Volkov's husband," someone whispered, and suddenly Vincent was surrounded by people wanting to know about Natasha, offering prayers in languages he didn't recognize, pressing his hands with weathered fingers. "She saved my daughter," an elderly woman said in broken English. "Diabetes, no insurance. Dr. Volkov, she make payment plan. $1 a week. Said health is not luxury. She delivered my baby," another added. "Emergency, no time for hospital. She stayed all night. No charge. Said babies don't wait for business hours." Story after story, each one a testament to the woman lying unconscious across town. Vincent hadn't known. He'd funded the clinic, but never understood what that money became. Not just medicine and equipment, but hope for people who'd run out of options. Her office is back here, Marina said, leading them through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and determination. She hasn't. I haven't changed anything. Kept thinking she'd be back any day. The office was small, cluttered, nothing like the pristine spaces Vincent inhabited. Medical journals stacked on every surface. Patient files organized with colorful tabs. And on the desk, 3 notebooks labeled baby preparation in Natasha's distinctive handwriting. Vincent opened the first with shaking hands. It was meticulous, filled with feeding schedules, developmental milestones, vaccination timelines. But between the practical notes were personal observations. Vincent will want to hire night nurses. Let him, but make sure he does at least 1 night feeding himself. He needs to know the weight of 3 a.m. responsibility. The twins should learn Russian and English equally. Papa can teach Russian. Vincent can teach the language of ambition. If something happens to me, make sure they know they were wanted. Fought for. That their father's fear was just love wearing a disguise. That last line broke something in Vincent. He stood in her cluttered office, holding her plans for a future she might never see, while their baby slept in carriers at his feet. Alexei read over his shoulder, occasionally grunting approval at his daughter's thorough planning. She knew. The older man said finally. My Natasha always knew things might go wrong. It's the diabetic's curse, living with mortality as a constant companion. But she chose hope anyway. How? How do you choose hope when statistics say otherwise? Because statistics don't raise children. Hope does. Statistics don't heal patients. Hope does. You want to know the difference between you and my daughter? You see numbers. She saw faces. Vincent looked around the clinic, at the staff who'd kept it running without their heart, at the patients who waited despite uncertain care, at the building itself that stood as a testament to one woman's refusal to accept that poverty should equal suffering. I want to expand it, he heard himself say. The clinic. Make it what she envisioned. Free care for anyone who needs it, especially diabetics. With what money? You're already spending millions on her care. I'll find it. Sell something. Liquidate assets. Whatever it takes. And who'll run it? You? Between diaper changes and board meetings. We'll find someone. Someone who sees faces, not numbers. Marina cleared her throat. I've been running it. These past weeks. Not officially, but someone had to. The patients keep coming. Then run it officially. I'll double your salary. Triple it. Whatever you need. I don't want your money, Mr. Morozov. I want your commitment. This clinic was Natasha's heart. If you're going to put your name on it, you better mean it. Not my name. Hers. The Volkov Morozov Free Clinic. And yes, I mean it. They spent the rest of the morning going through Natasha's notebooks, finding treasures in her planning. Lists of books to read to the twins. Songs to sing. Values to instill. She'd even written letters for their future birthdays, stacked in a drawer marked, just in case. Do I open them? Vincent asked Alexei. No. Those are for the twins, when they're ready. When they need their mother's words. That time isn't now. The babies woke hungry and cranky, turning the office into a nursery. Vincent changed diapers on Natasha's desk, while Alexei heated bottles in the break room microwave. Marina held Katia, telling her stories about her mother delivering babies in this very room. She'll wake up, Marina said suddenly. I know everyone thinks I'm naive, but I can feel it. Natasha's too stubborn to leave all this unfinished. Stubbornness doesn't cure brain damage, Alexei said gently. No, but it helps. I've seen her fight through impossible things. Remember when she had that severe hypoglycemic episode during boards? Came to 5 minutes before the exam started, aced it anyway. Or when she worked 3 days straight during the flu outbreak, for in one arm, treating patients with the other. Natasha doesn't quit. This is different, Vincent said. This isn't willpower. It's neurons and synapses and damage we can't quantify. Everything's about quantifying with you, isn't it? Marina's voice held sudden heat. Maybe that's why you can't see what's obvious. She's fighting. Every day, she stays alive as a fight. Every dream, every eye movement, every breath is her refusing to go. You want to quantify something? Quantify that. They left the clinic with more than notebooks. They left with purpose. Vincent had calls to make, lawyers to summon, plans to draft. The Volkov Morozov Free Clinic would become what Natasha had envisioned, a place where money didn't determine mortality. He'd sell his vacation homes, liquidate his art collection, whatever it took. You're trying to buy forgiveness again, Alexei observed as they drove home. Maybe. Does it matter if it helps people? I suppose not. But Vincent, you can't rebuild her entire world and expect her to wake up to inhabit it. Life doesn't work that way. Then how does it work? Messily. Imperfectly. Without grand gestures or easy redemption. You want my advice? Stop trying to be the hero of this story. Just be present in it. That night, Vincent took the night shift himself, sending the nurse home. He walked the floors with crying babies, heated bottles with fumbling hands, changed diapers in the dark. By dawn, he understood why parents looked perpetually exhausted. It wasn't just the lack of sleep. It was the weight of being needed so completely, so constantly. Your mother did this alone, he told the twins as sunrise painted the penthouse gold. For 2 months, she managed alone. While I sat in board meetings and pretended you didn't exist. How did I become this person? When did I decide safety was worth more than love? Mikhail blew a spit bubble, which Vincent chose to interpret as sympathy. Katia slept on, peaceful for once, tiny fist curled against her cheek. They were so perfectly imperfect, these humans he'd helped create and then abandoned. Every day they grew more themselves. Mikhail's thoughtful frowns, Katia's dramatic sighs, both of them carrying pieces of their parents in miniature form. The days developed rhythm. Early morning feedings. Hospital visits where Vincent reported every milestone to Natasha's unconscious form. Afternoon walks with Alexei, who'd extended his stay indefinitely. Evening battles with bottles and bedtime. Night wakings that felt eternal but passed in blinks. 2 months became 3. The twins started smiling, real smiles, not just gas. Vincent caught Katia's first on video, her face lighting up when he made a ridiculous noise during a diaper change. Mikhail's came later, quieter, a subtle upturn of lips when Alexei sang a Russian lullaby. She's missing it, Vincent said during one of his vigils, laptop open to show Natasha the videos she couldn't see. Their first smiles, their growth, the way Katia scrunches her nose exactly like you do. Did do. The grammar of coma was impossible. Past tense felt like giving up. Present tense felt like lying. Future tense felt like magical thinking. So Vincent existed in linguistic limbo, matching Natasha's medical one. The expansion plans for the clinic are approved. He continued his one-sided conversation. We're adding a dedicated diabetes center. Your father suggested naming it after your mother. The Ekaterina Volkov Diabetes Treatment Wing. Free insulin, free supplies, free education. Everything you always said should exist. Her eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids. The nurses said she was in another REM cycle, her longest yet. 3 hours of dreams, whatever dreams coma patients had. Vincent had read every study, consulted every expert. Some said the dreams were meaningless neuron firings. Others believed they were the brain's attempt to process and heal. No one knew for certain. Mr. Morozov? Dr. Harrison entered with his tablet and careful expression. It's been 3 months. I'm aware. We need to discuss long-term care options. The insurance company is pushing for her to be moved to a specialized facility. I'll pay out of pocket. She stays here. Mr. Morozov, at some point we need to be realistic. The chances of recovery after 3 months. You said 6 months. You said give it 6 months before making final decisions. I said that was the outer edge of possibility. But the likelihood decreases every day. And the cost. I don't care about the cost. You should. Not for yourself, but for your children. The money you're spending on potentially false hope could be securing their futures. Their future includes their mother. Does it? Or are you keeping a body alive while their actual mother is already gone? The words hit like physical blows because Vincent had wondered the same thing during dark 3 a.m. moments. Was he being noble or selfish? Was his refusal to let go love or cruelty? The questions had no clean answers, just like everything else in this new life. 3 more months, Vincent said finally. Give me 3 more months. If there's no improvement by then, we'll discuss alternatives. Dr. Harrison left with his tablets and statistics. Vincent stayed with his wife and hope. Outside, Chicago moved through its day, indifferent to the small tragedies playing out in hospital rooms. Inside, machines breathed for a woman who used to breathe life into broken places. That evening, something shifted. Vincent was telling Natasha about Mikhail's attempts to grab toys, demonstrating with gestures she couldn't see when her hand moved. Not a twitch or reflex, but a deliberate motion toward his voice. "Natasha?" He grabbed her hand, feeling for response. "Can you hear me? Squeeze if you can hear me." Nothing. But her hand stayed oriented toward him, fingers slightly curled as if trying to grasp something just out of reach. Vincent held his breath, afraid to hope, afraid not to. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm right here. I've been here every day. The twins are beautiful, Natasha. They're perfect. They need you. I need you. Please. Please come back." Her fingers twitched. Maybe reflex, maybe intention, maybe just Vincent's desperate imagination. But he pressed the call button anyway, summoning nurses and doctors and witnesses to what might be nothing or everything. Dr. Harrison arrived skeptical but thorough. He ran response tests, shined lights, called for immediate EEG. Through it all, Natasha's hand stayed turned toward Vincent's voice, like a flower following sun. "There's increased activity," the neurologist announced after reviewing the results. "Not consciousness, not yet, but definite increased activity in the temporal lobe. She's processing auditory input more actively than before." "So she can hear me?" "Possibly. The brain is mysterious, Mr. Morozov. We're seeing signs of heightened response to familiar voices." "Yours specifically? Have you been here often?" "Every day? Twice a day? I tell her about the twins, the clinic, everything." "Keep doing that. If she's in there, fighting to find her way back, familiar voices might be the breadcrumbs she needs." Vincent doubled his visits. He brought the twins whenever possible, their baby sounds filling the sterile room. Alexei came too, telling stories in Russian about Natasha's childhood. Marina brought updates from the clinic. They created a cocoon of voices, surrounding Natasha with reminders of the life waiting for her return. Days passed in microscopic improvements. A finger twitch becoming a hand squeeze. Eye movements responding to specific names. Heart rate changes when the twins cried. Small signs that someone was still home in the damaged neural pathways. "She's trying," Vincent told Alexei one evening as they watched both twins sleep in the hospital room. Special permission granted for extended visits. "I can feel it. She's trying to come back. Or you're seeing what you need to see." "Maybe. But what's the alternative? Give up? Accept defeat?" "That's not what she would do." "No," Alexei admitted. Natasha never accepted defeat. Even when her blood sugar crashed during her med school interviews, she insisted on finishing. Gave the best interview of her life while eating glucose tablets. The admissions committee said they'd never seen such determination. Tell her that story. Tell her all the stories. Maybe one of them will be the key. So they told stories. Every visitor, every day, adding threads to the tapestry of memory they wove around her. Vincent found himself talking about moments he'd forgotten. Their first fight over his tendency to solve problems with money. Their first shared morning when she'd made Russian pancakes and burned them spectacularly. The way she'd looked at him when he'd finally said, "I love you," without qualifying it with logic. The twins grew during these hospital days. 4 months old now, they were hitting milestones with determined precision. Mikhail could hold his head up, studying the world with those serious eyes. Katya had discovered her voice, babbling conversations with invisible friends. Both recognized Vincent's voice, turning toward him with trust he wasn't sure he'd earned. "Your children are beautiful," a nurse commented during one visit. "They have their mother's spirit." "How can you tell?" "The way they fight. Premature babies often struggle, accept limitations. Yours push against every boundary. Just like Dr. Volkov never accepted what diabetes meant she couldn't do. She called it her superpower once. Said it taught her to plan better than everyone else. To never take a single day for granted. Smart woman. The smartest. Which is why I can't understand." Vincent trailed off, unable to finish the thought that haunted him. Why someone so smart had chosen someone so cowardly. That night, after the twins were settled at home with Alexei, Vincent sat alone with Natasha. The hospital had relaxed visiting hours for him, understanding that hope had its own schedule. He held her hand, feeling the warmth that promised nothing but refused to abandon possibility. "I've been thinking about what you wrote," he said into the darkness. "About walls keeping love in as much as pain out. You were right. I built so many walls I created a prison. And when you offered to help me escape, I chose the familiar cage over uncertain freedom." Her fingers moved against his. Definite movement, not reflexive but responsive. Vincent's heart accelerated. But he kept talking, afraid to break whatever spell was building. The twins smiled today. Both of them. Katya at the terrible face Alexei makes during bath time. Mikhail at absolutely nothing. Just sudden joy at existing. I filmed it for you. Added it to the hundreds of videos waiting. A whole library of moments you're missing. More movement. Her whole hand now, turning to grip his with weak but unmistakable intention. Vincent hit the call button, but didn't let go, didn't stop talking. I know you're in there. I know you're fighting. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. The twins need their mother. I need my wife. The clinic needs its heart. But we'll wait. However long it takes, we'll wait. Mr. Morozov? The night nurse appeared, took in the scene, and immediately paged the on-call neurologist. Is she responsive? She's squeezing my hand. Really squeezing, not just reflex. Keep talking to her. I'll get the doctor. But Vincent had run out of words. 3 months of one-sided conversations had emptied his reserves. So instead, he did something he'd never done before. He sang. Badly, quietly, but he sang the lullaby Alexei had taught him, the one that calmed both twins. Russian words he barely understood, but melody that meant comfort. Natasha's eyes opened. Not all the way, not focused, but open, searching, alive in a way that transcended mechanical function. Vincent's voice cracked, but he kept singing, watching her fight through pharmaceutical fog and neural damage to find him. Vin. The sound was barely breath, forced past the ventilator tube, but it was her voice. Her impossible, beautiful, alive voice. I'm here. Don't try to talk. Just rest. You're safe. You're alive. The twins are perfect. Everything's waiting for you. Her eyes found his, and in them he saw not just recognition, but something else. Disappointment? Anger? Love? Maybe all three, because even mostly dead, Natasha Volkov-Morozov contained multitudes. The doctor arrived, tests began, machines beeped urgency. But through it all, her hand held his, weak but present, a lifeline thrown across the abyss of coma. She couldn't speak past the tubes, could barely move, but she was there. Damaged, but not destroyed. Changed, but not gone. Well, the neurologist said after initial tests, this is unexpected. She's showing purposeful movement, definite consciousness. We'll need extensive testing to determine the extent of function, but, Mr. Morozov, your wife appears to be waking up. How much of her? The question escaped before Vincent could stop it. How much of her is left? That's what we need to determine. Coma recovery isn't like the movies. It's slow, often incomplete. She may have significant deficits. Speech, movement, memory. We won't know until we can do full assessments. But she's alive. Really alive, not just technically alive. Yes. Against rather significant odds, Mrs. Volkov-Morozov appears to be rejoining us. The next hours blurred into a marathon of tests and procedures. The ventilator was slowly weaned, allowing Natasha to breathe on her own for the first time in months. Her throat, raw from tubes, couldn't form words yet, but her eyes spoke volumes. They tracked movement, responded to questions, filled with tears when Vincent showed her photos of the twins. They're so big, she whispered when speech finally came, her voice rusty with disuse. How long? 3 months. You've been gone 3 months. Gone. She seemed to taste the word, finding it insufficient. Not gone. Trapped. Could hear sometimes. Couldn't find way back. What brought you back? The song. Mama's lullaby. You learned it. Your father taught me. For the twins. They love it. You stayed. It wasn't a question, but Vincent answered anyway. Every day? I'm so sorry, Natasha. For everything. For leaving. For what I said. For being a coward when you needed a partner. Shoo. She lifted one trembling hand to his face. Later. Guilt later. Now, babies. Need to see my babies. Vincent called Alexei, waking him and the twins, not caring about the hour. Within 30 minutes, they arrived, Alexei carrying both carriers with grandfather strength. The babies were fussy from being woken, but their cries filled the room with life. My loves, Natasha breathed, tears streaming as Vincent carefully placed Katya on her chest. The baby stopped crying immediately, some primitive recognition calming her. My little Katya, you're so beautiful. She has your temper, Vincent said, supporting the baby since Natasha's arms were still weak. Fights everything on principle. Good. Women should fight. She turned her eyes to Mikhail in Alexei's arms. Am I serious, boy? Come here, little philosopher. They arranged the twins carefully on her chest, Vincent and Alexei supporting them, while Natasha memorized faces she'd only seen in dreams. The babies seemed to recognize her too, both calming at her touch, their breathing synchronizing with hers. Papa, she said to Alexei in Russian, then switched to English. You came. Marina called. Said my daughter was dying. I discover instead she's too stubborn to die properly. Mama's genes. Yes, she was stubborn too. Stubborn enough to live 10 years past doctors' predictions. You have more of her than you know. I'm sorry. For our fight. For the things I said. Alexei waved one hand dismissively. Daughters fight with fathers. It's tradition. The important thing is you survive to fight another day. Dr. Harrison arrived as dawn broke through the windows, finding a room transformed from death watch to reunion. His expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and what might have been joy. Mrs. Volkov-Morozov, this is unexpected. Sorry to mess up your statistics. Natasha managed, her voice stronger with use. Never apologize for beating odds. We'll need to run comprehensive tests, develop a recovery plan. You've been immobile for 3 months. There will be significant rehabilitation needed. Whatever it takes. I have babies to raise, a husband to train, a life to live. She looked at Vincent then, and he saw the questions waiting. Why he'd left, why he'd stayed. What happened now? But those were conversations for later, when she was stronger, when words could carry the weight of what needed saying. For now, it was enough that she was breathing on her own. Enough that their children lay peaceful on her chest. Enough that the impossible had bent just far enough to let hope through. The media got wind of the story within days. Millionaire's miraculous recovery made for irresistible headlines. Vincent tried to shield Natasha from the attention, but she insisted on giving one interview, from her hospital bed, twins in her arms. People need hope, she said when Vincent protested. If our story gives even one family reason to wait, to try, then the invasion of privacy is worth it. She spoke simply about her experience, the fragments she remembered from her coma, the voices that kept her tethered to life. But mostly she talked about the clinic, about the diabetes center being built, about the need for health care that didn't discriminate based on bank accounts. My husband says I called him a coward once, she said, looking directly at the camera. I was wrong. Cowards don't stay. They don't spend every day talking to someone who might never answer. They don't learn lullabies in languages they don't speak. Vincent proved that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love despite terror. The interview went viral. Donations poured in for the clinic. Families dealing with coma patients reached out, seeking hope. Through it all, Natasha focused on recovery with the same determination she'd once applied to medicine. Physical therapy was brutal. 3 months of immobility had wasted her muscles, left her weak as the premature babies she'd fought to deliver. But she approached it like everything else, systematically, stubbornly, successfully. Your wife is remarkable, the physical therapist told Vincent after a particularly grueling session. Most patients complain. She just asks for harder exercises. She doesn't believe in most. No, she certainly doesn't. Vincent had moved a bed into her hospital room, refusing to leave even as she improved. He brought the twins daily, watching her slowly reclaim her role as mother. Her hands shook at first, arms too weak to hold bottles. But she persisted, relearning her children as they learned her. They don't know me, she said one evening, watching Katia fuss in her arms. I'm a stranger who smells familiar. Give it time. You're all getting acquainted. Time. She laughed, but it was bitter. 3 months stolen. Their first smiles, first sounds. Gone. Not gone. Recorded. I have hundreds of videos. Every moment I thought you might want to see. You documented their lives for me. I promised myself that if you woke up, you wouldn't have missed anything important. So I recorded everything. First bath, first smile, first time they slept through a feeding. It's all there. She cried then, not the gentle tears of joy, but the ugly sobs of grief for time lost. Vincent held her carefully, mindful of still healing body, while she mourned the months stolen by biology and bad luck. I'm so angry, she admitted when the storm passed. At my body for failing. At you for leaving. At myself for not being stronger. At God for letting this happen. I'm so full of rage, I don't know where to put it. Use it. Channel it into recovery. You always said anger was just passion without direction. So direct it. When did you become wise? When I realized being smart hadn't saved me from being stupid. She laughed, real this time, and kissed him carefully. Their first kiss since before, tasting of hospital air and second chances. Weeks passed in small victories. First steps with a walker. First night without oxygen support. First successful feeding of both twins simultaneously. Each milestone celebrated like the miracle it was. The clinic expansion continued under Marina's direction, with Natasha consulting from her hospital bed. They hired 3 new doctors, all committed to the mission of free care. The Diabetes Center took shape, funded by Vincent's liquidated assets and public donations. You're going to bankrupt yourself, Natasha warned, reviewing the latest budget projections. Good. Maybe being poor again will remind me what matters. Vincent, be serious. I am. I spent so long running from poverty that I forgot why I was running. It wasn't the lack of money that killed my mother. It was the lack of access. The clinic ensures no one else dies for the same reason. And when the money runs out, then we find more. Or we scale back. Or we figure it out. But we don't stop trying. She studied him, this man who'd called her a burden and then refused to let her go. You've changed. No, I've just stopped pretending I hadn't. The day of her discharge arrived with April rain and nervous energy. For months after entering the hospital in labor, Natasha was going home. Changed, scarred, but whole in ways that mattered. The penthouse felt foreign after so long away. Vincent had baby-proofed everything, soft edges and safety gates creating a maze of protection. The twins' nursery had been redesigned 3 times, his anxiety manifesting in interior decoration. It's perfect, Natasha said, leaning heavily on her walker as she surveyed the space. Unnecessarily perfect, but perfect. I wanted it ready. For when you came home. You never doubted I'd wake up? Every day? Every hour. But doubt and action aren't mutually exclusive. I doubted, but I prepared anyway. Hope is a verb, not a feeling. Now you're definitely getting wise. They settled into a routine that accommodated Natasha's limitations. Physical therapy in the mornings. Clinic consultations via video in the afternoons. Evenings with the twins, who slowly learned their mother was more than a visiting stranger. The breakthrough came during a midnight feeding. Katia was inconsolable, rejecting bottles and comfort with equal fury. Vincent was walking her, exhausted and out of ideas, when Natasha appeared in the doorway. Give her to me. You're supposed to be resting. Give her to me. Vincent transferred the screaming baby carefully. Natasha settled in the rocking chair, movements still stiff but determined. She didn't try to feed Katia or walk her. Instead, she just held her close and started talking. Not baby talk or soothing nonsense, but real conversation. I know you're angry, little one. The world is big and bright, and nothing makes sense. You're probably wondering where I've been. Why Daddy and Dadushka have been doing everything. Why I smell like medicine instead of mother. Katia's cries softened to whimpers, green eyes fixed on green eyes. I was sick. Very sick. My body decided to throw a tantrum right when you needed me most. But I could hear you sometimes. In the darkness, I could hear you crying, and I fought so hard to get back to you. To both of you. The baby had stopped crying entirely, mesmerized by her mother's voice. I miss so much. Your first everything. But we have all your other firsts waiting. First words. First steps. First day of school. First heartbreak, though Daddy will probably try to prevent that with money or threats. First time you realize your parents are just people doing their best with broken tools. Hey, Vincent protested softly. Slightly less broken now. Hush. This is girl talk. Natasha adjusted Katia, who was now contentedly sucking her thumb. Where was I? Oh yes. Firsts. I promise to be there for all the ones that matter. And even if I wobble sometimes, even if the diabetes makes things complicated, even if I need help, I'm not going anywhere again. You're stuck with me, little warrior. Katia fell asleep like that, held by her mother for the first time in memory. Vincent found them there an hour later, both sleeping, and captured the moment in a photo that would later sit on his desk, reminding him that some burdens were actually blessings. Recovery wasn't linear. Natasha had bad days when her body wouldn't cooperate, when simple tasks exhausted her, when the gap between who she'd been and who she was felt insurmountable. But she had more good days, days when her strength returned, when the twins recognized her laugh, when the future felt possible instead of just survivable. The clinic reopened with fanfare. The Ekaterina Volkov Diabetes Center drew patients from across the city. Free insulin, free education, free hope. Natasha insisted on attending, still using her walker but dressed in her white coat. "You're not cleared for patient care," Vincent reminded her. "I'm not treating, just greeting. These are my people, Vincent. Diabetics who choose life despite the odds. I need to see them. They need to see me." She was right. Patient after patient approached, sharing stories of rationing insulin, of choosing medicine over meals, of the fear that came with chronic illness in an acute care world. Natasha listened to each one, making notes for Marina, planning improvements. "This is what I was fighting for," she told Vincent that night, exhausted but glowing. "Not just our babies. All of them. Every person who needs care they can't afford. I know. I finally understand. Wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you can give. Look at that. 6 months of single parenting, and you're practically socialist." Practical socialist. Important distinction. They were learning to laugh again, to exist in the space between trauma and recovery. The twins grew into their personalities, Katia loud and demanding, Mikhail watchful and sweet. Both had their mother's fighting spirit and their father's stubborn streak, a combination that promised interesting teenage years. "We need to talk," Natasha said one evening, after the twins were asleep. "Really talk. About what happened. About why you left." Vincent had been dreading this conversation, but he knew it was necessary. "I was terrified. Not of you. Of losing you. Of watching you die slowly like my mother did. So I tried to control it by leaving first. You called me a burden. I called you what I was afraid you'd become. What my mother became at the end, someone I loved but couldn't save. I projected every fear onto you and made it your fault for triggering them. That's very self-aware. Therapy. Books. Lots of books. And Alexei, actually. He's surprisingly insightful when he's not being terrifying. He likes you now. Says any man who learns Russian lullabies can't be all bad. I'm not all bad. Just significantly flawed with good intentions. Aren't we all?" Natasha shifted closer, her recovery making physical proximity possible again. "I need you to understand something. My diabetes isn't going away. There will be other scares, other emergencies. Can you handle that without running?" "I don't know," Vincent admitted. "But I know I'll try. I know that leaving hurt worse than staying ever could. I know our children deserve parents who choose courage over comfort. And us? Do we deserve each other after everything? Deserve is the wrong word. We're matched in our damage. You with your need to save everyone but yourself. Me with my need to control everything but my fears. Maybe that makes us perfect for each other. Or perfectly wrong. But it definitely makes us something." "Something," Natasha agreed. "I can work with something." They rebuilt slowly, carefully. Trust was harder to repair than bodies. Vincent proved his commitment daily. In midnight feedings, in therapy appointments, in board meetings where he prioritized family over profit. Natasha approved hers by including him in medical decisions, by asking for help when she needed it, by choosing to forgive what couldn't be undone. The twins' first birthday approached with the weight of a miracle. 2 lives that almost weren't, celebrated by parents who'd almost lost everything. The party was small, family, close friends, key staff from the clinic. No media, no spectacle, just people who understood the weight of survival. 1 year, Natasha marveled, watching Mikhail demolish a piece of cake with scientific precision while Katia painted herself with frosting. "We made it 1 year. Together," Vincent added. "Mostly together. Together counts more than perfect." Alexei had extended his stay indefinitely, claiming the twins needed Russian influence to balance their American softness. Really, he'd fallen in love with being Dedushka, with weekly dinners and daily video calls and the chance to be the grandfather he'd never thought he'd be. "Family," he said, raising a glass of vodka while the twins napped off their sugar crashes. "To family. Blood and chosen. Perfect and broken. Together despite everything." They toasted, this unlikely clan bound by crisis and choice. Marina was there, having turned the clinic into everything Natasha had envisioned. Dr. Chun, who still consulted on the twins' development. The night nurses who'd become aunties. The village it had taken to survive. "I need to say something," Natasha announced, struggling to her feet. She could walk unassisted now, though she tired easily. A year ago, I almost died bringing these babies into the world. My husband had left me. My body had betrayed me. Everything was falling apart. But people showed up. Some who had to. Some who chose to. Some who came back when coming back was hard. She looked at Vincent, who was trying not to cry into his cake. Marriage is not a fairy tale. It's a medical emergency where sometimes one person has to breathe for both. It's choosing to stay when leaving would be logical. It's learning lullabies in languages you don't speak because love requires translation. Vincent and I broke our marriage. Shattered it completely. But we built something new from the pieces. Not perfect. Definitely not easy. But ours. To building from broken pieces, Marina added, raising her juice glass. To second chances, Dr. Chun contributed. To stubborn women who refuse to die, Alexei concluded, which made everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. Later, after guests had gone and babies were dreaming, Vincent and Natasha sat on their balcony, Chicago glittering below. She was tucked against him, still too thin but gaining strength daily. Do you regret it? She asked. The pregnancy? Everything that followed. I regret leaving. I regret the words I said. I regret the time we lost. But the twins? You fighting to bring them here? Never. Even though I almost died? Even though it cost everything. Especially because of that. You taught me something I'd forgotten. That life isn't about avoiding risk. It's about choosing which risks are worth taking. You were worth it. They were worth it. Even if we'd lost everything, the trying would have been worth it. You have become wise. I had a good teacher. She wrote me letters in a journal, thinking she might die. Told me truths I needed to hear. Reminded me that fear was just love in disguise. I was pretty smart for someone in organ failure. You were, are, will be. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd broken each other and chosen to heal together. Somewhere in the penthouse, a baby stirred, probably Katia who'd inherited her mother's inability to sleep through the night. Soon they'd go tend to her, tag-teaming parenthood like they'd learned to do. But for now, they had this moment. This balcony. This view of a city that had watched them fall apart and come together. I love you, Vincent said. Present tense. Active voice. No qualifiers. I love you too, Natasha replied. Despite. Because. Through. All the prepositions. Is that enough? Love with prepositions. It's everything. Love without prepositions is just a greeting card. Love with prepositions is a life. And that's what they built in the months and years that followed. A life with prepositions. Love despite diabetes and because of babies. Hope through setbacks and around obstacles. Joy during midnight feedings and after therapy sessions. A marriage rebuilt not in spite of its breaking, but because of what the breaking taught them. The clinic grew into a network. 3 locations, then 5, then 10. Free care for thousands who'd fallen through healthcare's cracks. Vincent's business acumen and Natasha's medical vision creating something unprecedented, sustainable charity that didn't feel like charity. The twins grew too. These miracle babies who'd entered the world too early but refused to be delayed. Katia became a force of nature, all curls and opinions and fierce protection of her quieter brother. Mikhail surprised everyone by being the daredevil, his thoughtful nature hiding a love of calculated risks. He's definitely your son, Natasha would say when Mikhail attempted some new feat of toddler engineering. She's definitely yours, Vincent would counter when Katia organized her stuffed animals into a pretend clinic. They were both right. The twins carried their parents' best and worst traits, remixed into something entirely their own. They grew up knowing their mother had almost died bringing them into the world, that their father had almost lost himself to fear, that their family was built on second chances and stubborn hope. Tell us the story, Katia would demand at bedtime, because children love stories where they're the heroes. So Vincent and Natasha would tell it, this story of breakdown and breakthrough, of a man who thought money could protect him from loss, of a woman who thought love could overcome any obstacle, of how they were both wrong and both right, of twins who arrived too early but exactly on time, of a family that broke apart and came together stronger for the breaking. And they lived happily ever after? Mikhail would ask, always needing certainty. They lived, Natasha would answer. Happily sometimes, sadly sometimes, but always together. That's not how stories end, Katia would protest. No, Vincent would agree. But it's how life continues. And continue it did. Through diabetes scares and business challenges. Through the twins' first day of school and Natasha's return to full-time medicine. Through Alexei's permanent move to Chicago and Marina's wedding in the clinic chapel. Through expansions and setbacks and ordinary Tuesdays that felt like miracles when you remembered how close they'd come to not happening. The interview requests never stopped coming. People wanted the fairy tale, the millionaire who chose love, the coma patient who woke up, the babies who thrived. But Vincent and Natasha rarely agreed to tell it, preferring to live their story rather than perform it. When they did speak publicly, it was always about the clinic, about healthcare access, about the thousands of families one medical crisis away from catastrophe. They turned their trauma into advocacy, their survival into service. We got lucky, Natasha would say. Vincent could afford to keep me alive. He could pay for specialists and private rooms and experimental treatments. But luck shouldn't determine who lives and who dies. Money shouldn't equal mortality. The Volkov-Morozov Free Clinic Network eventually served 50,000 patients annually. Free insulin for diabetics. Free prenatal care for high-risk pregnancies. Free hope for people who'd run out of options. It became a model, replicated in other cities, proof that profitable compassion was possible. But that's the large story, the one that made headlines and changed policies. The small story, the real story, happened in the quiet moments. In Vincent learning to check Natasha's blood sugar without waking her, gentle fingers and practiced movements, love as daily maintenance. In Natasha teaching the twins to see her insulin pump as superhero equipment, turning medical necessity into adventure. In family dinners where Alexei told embarrassing stories and Marina brought chaos, and the twins performed whatever they'd learned that week. In the nights when Vincent would wake in cold sweats, dreaming Natasha hadn't woken up, and she'd hold him until the fear passed. In the mornings when Natasha's body wouldn't cooperate, and Vincent would carry her to the shower, help her dress, remind her that needing help wasn't weakness. In the arguments over money and medicine, work and family, all the ordinary conflicts of a marriage that had survived extraordinary trauma. In the reconciliations that followed, because they'd learned that love wasn't the absence of conflict, but the commitment to resolution. In the annual trips to Natasha's mother's grave, where they'd leave flowers and updates, telling Ekaterina about the center bearing her name. In the birthday letters Natasha had written during pregnancy, opened each year with ceremony and tears, her past self speaking to her present children. In the moment, 5 years later, when Katia announced she wanted to be a doctor, like Mama, but with less, almost dying. In Mikhail's quieter declaration that he'd run the business side, like Papa, but with less running away. In their laughter at being reduced to cautionary tales by their own children. In the pregnancy test Natasha took on the twins' 5th birthday, positive against all odds and recommendations. In Vincent's reaction, not fear this time, but joy tempered with caution. In their decision to try again, knowing the risks, choosing hope over statistics. In the daughter born healthy at 37 weeks, named Hope because sometimes the universe appreciates irony. In Alexei holding his newest granddaughter while the twins argued over who loved her more. In the full circle of a family that almost wasn't, now expanding beyond what anyone had dared imagine. The story could end here, with new life and hard-won happiness. But that wouldn't be honest. Life doesn't end with babies or breakthroughs. It continues, messy and uncertain, beautiful and broken. Natasha's diabetes remained a daily challenge. Vincent's fear of loss never fully disappeared. The twins grew into complicated humans with their own struggles. Hope lived up to her name, but also to her genetics, inheriting both parents' stubbornness and her mother's medical complexities. There were hospitalizations and heated arguments, business failures and family tensions. Days when the weight of what they'd almost lost made the present feel too precious to bear. Days when they took it all for granted, bickering over groceries and schedules like any ordinary couple. But through it all, they stayed. Not perfectly, not easily, but consistently. They'd learned the hardest lesson, that love wasn't a feeling but a choice, made daily in small acts of courage and care. Would you do it again? Vincent asked one night, years into their rebuilt life. Knowing everything that would happen? Yes, Natasha answered without hesitation. Would you? Ask me in the morning, he said, which was their joke now. Never make permanent decisions in the dark. Wait for light, for clarity, for the courage that comes with sunrise. But they both knew his answer. For all the pain and fear and near loss, they'd do it again. Because on the other side of breakdown was breakthrough. On the other side of burden was blessing. On the other side of almost dying was fully living. And that's where they were now. Fully living. Imperfectly, incompletely, but intentionally. A family built from broken pieces. A love story that included its own destruction and rebuilding. A life measured not in money or achievements, but in moments of connection and grace. The penthouse still gleamed, but now it was cluttered with children's art and medical equipment. The clinic still served thousands, but now it was run by a team who'd caught the vision. Vincent still ran his company, but profits went to purpose. Natasha still practiced medicine, but balanced with the self-care she preached. They were older, scarred by their journey, wiser for their wounds. But when Vincent looked at Natasha across their chaotic dinner table, he saw the same woman who'd knelt in broken glass to help a server. When Natasha looked at Vincent, she saw the same man who'd wrapped her bleeding hand, lost and found, and fighting to stay found. I love you, they still said daily. Present tense. Active voice. All prepositions included. And somewhere in Chicago, in a gleaming tower and a free clinic, in the laughter of children who almost weren't and the tears of patients who almost couldn't afford to be, their love story continued. Not happily ever after, but happily ever onward. Which, as their children had learned, was how the best stories went. Not ending but evolving, not perfect but persistent, not a fairy tale, but something better. A true story, a human story, a story of how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the path to the best thing. How breaking can lead to building. How almost losing everything can teach you what everything really means. In the end, Vincent Morozov learned that burdens were just blessings too heavy to carry alone. Natasha Volkov learned that strength included knowing when to let others be strong for you. Together, they learned that love wasn't about avoiding storms, but about choosing who you wanted beside you when they hit. And their children? They learned that families weren't made from perfection, but from persistence. That love was a verb requiring daily conjugation. That hope was hereditary, but had to be actively inherited. The story continues even now, in exam rooms and boardrooms, in midnight feedings and morning medications. In every person who receives free insulin at a Volkov Morozov clinic. In every family that stays together through medical crisis because they heard about the millionaire who chose love over logic. In every moment that Natasha Volkov Morozov draws breath, defying statistics. In every decision Vincent Morozov makes from love instead of fear. In every laugh from children who exist because their mother refused to see pregnancy as a death sentence and their father finally learned that some risks are worth taking. This is their story. Not a fairy tale, but a medical record. Not a romance, but a recovery. Not perfect, but theirs, built from broken pieces into something beautiful and enduring and true. And if you're reading this in a hospital waiting room, wondering whether to hope or let go, whether to stay or run, whether love is worth the risk of loss, know this: there are no guaranteed outcomes. Medicine is uncertain. Life is fragile. Love is complicated. But sometimes, just sometimes, stubborn hope wins. Sometimes the person wakes up. Sometimes the babies thrive. Sometimes the marriage rebuilds stronger. Sometimes the burden becomes the blessing. Not always. Not even usually. But sometimes. And sometimes is enough reason to try. In the words of Natasha Volkov Morozov, written in a journal while 7 months pregnant and fighting for her life. If something happens, if I'm not there to remind him, promise me you'll try. Promise me you'll show him that vulnerability isn't weakness. That needing people isn't failure. That love is the only investment that actually matters in the end. She lived to remind him herself. But the message stands for all of us. Love is the only investment that actually matters in the end. Even when it breaks us. Even when we break it. Even when the cost seems too high and the odds seem too low. Love anyway. Stay anyway. Try anyway. Because on the other side of anyway is everything. And everything, as the Volkov Morozov family learned, is worth the risk. The end. Or rather, the continuation. Because the best stories never really end. They just teach us how to write our own.